It's something I often reflect on, and that is the fact that not only do we have the freshest air in the world and the cleanest water, the best whiskey, the best wine, the best private museum gallery, the best events, the best people, more visitors coming to our state than ever before. We can now also add to that list the Menzies Research Centre wanting to be part of the Tasmanian landscape. So thank you sincerely for hosting today's event. Can I also acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, Attorney General Elise Archer and Minister Jackie Petrusma, and our newest member, Jane Hallett, the member for Prosser, as well as Senator Erica Betts. And I do note as well the attendance of the Mayor of Kingborough, Steve Wass, here today. And to Sam and to Josh and distinguished members of our community, I really welcome the opportunity to talk a little about where our state's at, and importantly reflect on how we got here, and to talk a little about the 100-day plan, the 100-day concept, which is not something new. In fact, I've read it dates back to Napoleon, who in his first 100 days after escaping exile was able to rally and unify his old army and indeed much of France behind him. And of course things didn't quite work out as well as he might have liked, but the value of a concerted and deliberate plan that he had was significant. But perhaps more so Franklin Roosevelt's, his inauguration as the US president almost, in fact over 100 years later, and in the depths of the country's worst economic depression. In the course of his first 100 days in office, he took swift action to calm the nerves of the country's finances, to pass an unprecedented amount of legislation and set a benchmark against which all future presidents would be compared. Now, I accept that for me it's perhaps where the comparisons with these gentlemen end, but a 100-day plan is something that's been very important for my government. In fact, from the very first day, the very first morning after the election of a majority Liberal government back in 2014, a Sunday morning, and we also had a 100-day plan ready for the election this year. And they're a plan to help us to hit the ground running, to set the tone, to set a sense of urgency about what we were seeking to achieve, and also something that we would be prepared to be judged against and held to account for. Now, in 2014, things were a little different to what they are now. For a start, I didn't need a pair of these, which I do now, so I'll just make use of them. As well, it was the first time that the Liberal Party had been in government for 16 years. There was only one amongst our ranks who was in that government 16 years earlier. But worse, on coming into government, we were inheriting an economy that had stalled under the last government, a minority government. In fact, it had even fallen into recession. 10,000 jobs had been lost, business confidence was the lowest in the country, and they left us with $1 billion in deficits. The Department of Treasury and Finance released analysis in 2014 that showed that under the previous government, expenses continued to be greater than revenues. They'd consistently spent more in government than they were earning. They had a spending problem and they were certainly living way beyond their means. Now, in 2013, the Menzies Research Centre reported, having looked at 20 years of Labor governments right across the country, including here in Tasmania, that this was a classic case of where Labor had mastered the art of doing less with more and leaving Liberal governments to do the hard remedial work. They spend more, that is Labor governments, favour expensive bureaucracies and higher public sector wages without the proportionate improvement in outcomes for the people they represent. That was exactly what we were getting ourselves into in 2014. It was just what happened here. $1.1 billion in deficits, net debt anticipated to reach $400 million, a $1.5 billion provision account set aside to pay for our superannuation liabilities had been spent, every single cent of it, by Labor. But we accepted the responsibility on being elected to govern and immediately set about the plan that we'd taken to the 2014 election. We'd developed in opposition and wanted to implement in government. And it did include a 100-day plan that we released publicly, spelling out what we would do if elected. Our immediate priority was to kickstart our economy that had slipped into recession. In our first 100 days, we wanted to restore confidence in Tasmania's business community and take deliberate action that a classically Liberal government might not always do, but to intervene, step in and take action where previous governments had failed to do so, and show Tasmanian business that we would back them, to restore confidence that had fallen to the lowest levels in the country under a minority government. So we removed development charges, and that brought forward millions of dollars of investment. We introduced a local benefits test we'd been told in opposition we couldn't do, but that allowed more of our businesses to get government work. We extended payroll tax relief to support local businesses to create more jobs. We fought hard to protect jobs, to secure those jobs that were a threat, for example, at the Qantas call centre, and to keep them here in our state. We started a process to turn Tasmania's 29 separate planning schemes into a single one, the only one of its kind in the country. We launched a bold and innovative program to call for expressions of interest across the world for developers who might look to our World Heritage Area or our national parks as a place to develop world-class experiences in those areas. And our other main priority was to stop the budget bleeding. And in our first 100 days back in 2014, we released the first budget of a majority Liberal government. We made some difficult choices and some necessary savings, and we started living within our means and have continued to do so. But on day one, in our first term in government, we started to turn it all around, day by day. Now, in 2018, with the recent release of my government's fifth budget, it confirms that Tasmania has the strongest performing economy in the country. State final demand is well above the national average, and the past year grew at the second highest rate in the country, so a little more work to be done there. But our export sector has had the highest rate of growth in the country. The number of international visitors coming to our state is the highest of any state in the country. Investment in private new capital is 19% higher than last year and is the strongest in the country. Dwelling approvals are up 28% on the year before, compared to a national increase of 1.8%. Motor vehicle sales are the highest in the nation. Retail trade, we've had 42 consecutive months of growth. Our population is growing at the fastest rate in 7 years. There are now more people wanting to be here and fewer to leave. And confidence, business confidence has been restored and is again consistently ranked the highest in the country. And what that is important for is, of course, giving our business and industry community the confidence to invest more and to support more jobs. And Tasmania is, without doubt, a much more confident, prouder and stronger place now than it was in 2014, especially for the 13,400 Tasmanians that now have work, compared to the 10,000 who lost jobs during the last term of government. And there are more people wanting to be part of our labour force and to participate because there are more opportunities for them to do so. This recent budget confirms our finances remain in very sound shape. We've turned the deficits we inherited into surpluses across the forward estimates. We returned our budget to surplus 3 years ahead of schedule and delivered the best financial report and best financial outcome for a decade. We'll continue to manage our finances well, and we'll continue to live within our means, and we'll deliver each and every one of our election policies in full. And that includes another 100-day plan that we took to the state election in March, our second 100-day plan. And it is indeed a great honour, privilege and also opportunity to be only for the second time in the state's history a re-elected majority Liberal government to have that opportunity. But again, we were prepared to hit the ground running, and this time around with our plan to take Tasmania to the next level. With a strong economy and a strong budget, we're now better able to invest in the essential services that Tasmanians need, so that more Tasmanians can feel the benefit of that strong economy and that balanced budget. So while we've got more Tasmanian school kids getting their TCE now and staying in our school system, largely by virtue of the fact that we're extending all our high schools to offer years 11 and 12 and to give those kids their very best shot in life, we do understand that every parent, every person who cares for a student wants their kid to have the same quality of education here that you might get interstate. So there's more work to be done. And while our elective surgery waiting lists have fallen to the lowest level ever, we recognise that there are Tasmanians still needing healthcare sooner. We need to fix and rebuild a health system to give Tasmanians the very best care they deserve. And while our power prices are actually lower now than when we came into government because of deliberate action we've taken to keep cost of living pressures down, we understand they are still a very real issue for Tasmanian households and businesses. We've put more police into our communities. In fact, our government has employed more nurses, more teachers and more police that were cut under a Labor Green government to deliver better services. But we understand that Tasmanians do want to feel safe in their communities as well. So that's what taking Tasmania to the next level is all about. It's ensuring that all Tasmanians feel the benefit of our strong economy, our balanced budget, and that we as a government can deliver those essential services that Tasmanians expect. So today, and you've got a copy each of our 100-day plan and our first quarter plan, I can confirm that each and every one of our commitments in that 100 days has been delivered. In this time, we've delivered our budget, which of course confirms those surpluses. It confirms record investments into health and into education, into infrastructure, a $2.6 billion investment into the infrastructure Tasmania needs to support our growing economy, to make our roads safer, to reduce traffic congestion. And since the resumption of Parliament, we've passed legislation to restructure our Tasmanian Health Service so it's less bureaucratic, delivers more decision-making for our hospitals and those at the coalface. It reduces red tape and bureaucracy. And we've commenced the work needed to employ the 1,300 more health staff that we will need in our health system over the coming years. We've passed more legislation to reduce the tax burden in our state, to have the most competitive payroll tax regime in the country, to reduce payroll tax rates but also provide incentives for Tasmanian businesses to take on a trainee or an employee as an apprentice, to extend the first home owners grant so that we can sustain the growth in our building and construction sector, stamp duty for home buyers to reduce those cost of living pressures and to make housing affordability something Tasmanians can enjoy. Joint state and Commonwealth funding has secured major projects, massive investment by the Commonwealth into our road networks as well, which we welcome. $576 million for the Bridgewater Bridge to finally get that massive infrastructure project up and running. Almost $90 million from both governments to invest in one of our greatest assets, the iconic Cradle Mountain, to restore its place as one of our nation's iconic destinations. We've reached an agreement with Taswater and our local governments to ensure that we are improving the state's water and sewage infrastructure, reducing the forecast price increases and accelerating upgrades. We're developing the state's first trade strategy. We're reviewing our family violence laws to ensure that we give the greatest protection to those at risk. We've brought forward funding to deal with our affordable housing strategy, representing the greatest ever investment in affordable housing by any government in our state's history. We've passed legislation for Metro to start operating ferries on the River Duran. There's a lot in this year's budget and a lot to do. That's just a snapshot of it. But today we're also releasing our quarterly report on our first year agenda, and this continues the practice that we've taken into government from day one of publishing and also tabling in Parliament our annual work agenda so that all Tasmanians can see what we've committed to, what our plan is, we can be held to account for it. And it's an important legislative, economic, social and fiscal reform plan. That is important. It's not especially sexy, and some might say this is very classically business-like approach by a state government, but we believe in it, and it's something that we hold ourselves to account for as well, and it's something that happens in any good business year in, year out. Part of it all, and most importantly, with each element, it's about our long-term plan for the state. And this budget and our 100-day plan and our quarterly updates are how we implement what is, in my view, the most exciting thing about all we're doing, and that is to take Tasmania to the next level, to not only lift those services that Tasmanians depend on us to deliver, but also to seize the opportunities that now present to our state. That infrastructure, the job-creating infrastructure that I've referred to, that will improve our quality of life and help transform our economy, with a booming agricultural sector or a booming tourism sector that we will invest in, our great competitive strength. To also look to new opportunities to position Tasmania at the front of the pack nationally. Our economy is already strong, but when you consider our opportunity to be the nation's renewable energy powerhouse through massive investments by the state and Commonwealth governments that will deliver billions of dollars of investment and also hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs for Tasmanians. It's an exciting challenge and opportunity that we are embracing. So a very enthusiastic government returned, yes, 4 years on. We're a strong and unified team. We have a common sense of purpose, and we are very deliberate in all that we do. Our preference is not to make headlines, but to deliver. And that's what our budget and about these plans is all about. I do genuinely believe that Tasmania is in a much different state now to what it was just 4 years ago. We are a stronger, more resilient, prouder and more confident state on so many measures. It hasn't happened by chance. The state government and the national government is certainly playing its part through the plans that we are delivering and are delivering results. And of course, having a goal without a plan is a wish. It's only a wish. Having a plan without an action is utterly worthless. I believe the Tasmanian tiger is roaring again. It started with a change of government, with a change of mindset and with a 100-day plan. Thank you all.